We pick thought leaders who will antagonize our minds, change our perceptions, and diversify our perspectives. So on that note, I heartily welcome on behalf of the Airbnb India team, Swami Chidananda and his delegates and his team of Dhimahi. Swamiji, as some of you might have read on the profile, he did his engineering from IIT Madras way back, I think 30-40 years back, so he doesn't look that old. And then he also worked in the corporate sector. He taught in a few colleges, and since the last 30-35 years, he's been engaged in spirituality, in value-based education, in something what we today in corporate world call as learning and development. The workshop title, the title for today's workshop is getting proactive and trying to figure out if we can get proactive without getting stressed. So this season, actually this month is the season of our annual reviews. And during my annual review, I was told that I am meeting expectations, but I need to raise the bar. And I think a lot of us have heard these conversations year after year, where some of us are meeting expectations of our managers of the company, some are not able to meet all the expectations. But even in spite meeting expectations, they are always encouraged. Airbnb encourages us to raise the bar. And I have personally found that a little challenging for myself without getting stressed. So we want to hear from you today, and thank you so much for coming on your perspective on how we can get proactive and try and not be stress-free. So without further ado, before I hand it off to Swamiji, I will just like a warm welcome shout out to Chidananda Amma, who is also a spiritual teacher and she operates independently, and to Mrs. Indu Gautam, who has just flown from the US 2 days back just for the Dhimahi project. So a very warm welcome to you both, and thanks for joining us at a short notice. Without further ado, over to Swamiji now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nimish. That was a generous introduction and a good welcome. I am very encouraged, and I really mean it when I say I am very delighted to be amidst all of you here. I don't do this kind of program too often. Once in a while, I get to meet the kind of people that all of you are, and it's a shot in the arm for me. In fact, when he said that about him there was a comment wherever that you are meeting with expectations but you are now supposed to raise the bar, I said, my God, that's what people say about me also. So that means we are all in the same boat. Human life is pretty much the same. Superficially it seems different. We think that Westerners perhaps have a good time with their higher standard of living, and we have so many problems in our developing country, and they may sometimes imagine that India is a lot of spirituality or whatever. Some people believe like that. But actually around the world, to an extent, human story is one. All of us human beings have certain challenges which are so common. And in fact, when somebody like me, Swami Chidananda, with the title Swami comes, that also may to an extent cause a little jitter. Why are Swamis now aiming at Airbnb? Huh? But I tell you, that's another externality. I would go to the extent of saying that perhaps there is a better Swami in some of you than me, and there is a man of the world in a Swami also. Because these are all interconnected by just wearing some different kind of clothes, by changing the name and some other gestures, hardly anyone can change. Inner change or true change is not so easy at all. So, we are here today, I should say sincerely, on par. We are actually trying to do some loud thinking. It's not that I have something to tell you and give you from above. It could, at the end of the session, you never know, I might go with some lessons or some nice, sometimes your questions also would be such a gift to the speaker. So we are here to learn from each other, learn together, and we have an interesting topic, proactivity with reduced stress. Many a time we think that if we try to be proactive, as all the literature and all the advice expects us to be, it's going to be more and more stressful. Already, to go for his expression once more, to meet the expectations itself is so tiring. Now to raise the bar can be, it will be killing, one may imagine. So we are trying to explore this. Should it have to be so? And I have a few insights in that context. Friends, I would like to say, I'm sure some of you also are from science background. I have been long back of science background, or what I actually am going to share with you doesn't require much science at all. Think of an atom, and all of us have studied the model of an atom. You have a nucleus, you have electrons, and we think of, okay, an atom means all those particles. But we all know that physics, science has said to us that in the atomic model, the volume occupied by the particles is perhaps less than 0.1%. All the particles, suppose you think of the volume occupied. So is the case with the solar system also. If all the 9 or 10 planets and the sun, they occupy certain space, you add it up, you sum it up, and then think of the total volume of the solar system. The volume occupied by the objects is less than maybe 1%. So what am I trying to arrive at? There is so much of empty space, and so is our mind, our life, our consciousness. The thought of having to do something, the thought of having to avoid something, thought of how should I prioritize, 100 things, they seem to tax us, they seem to pull us down. Really speaking, they are a very, very small percentage of what we are endowed with. But since our attention is fully in those things, we feel that we have been taken to the end of our wit, or we are at our wit's end, as the expression goes. Here it is that mystics from West and East, Zen masters or Vedanta scholars or Sufi mystics or some tribal saints and so on, all of them have said some very wonderful things where there is a proposal or a proposition that while acting you could enjoy the serenity, calmness of as though you are not acting. I respect all the wisdom traditions the world over, and I sincerely do not believe that one country or one tradition has an upper hand, but I happen to be trained in the Indian tradition, the so-called Vedanta tradition. In the Gita you have a line, you have a little stanza which says, a person who has a certain spiritual intelligence is like the lotus leaf. Even if the lotus leaf, the lotus plant is in water and passing breeze throws water upon the lotus leaf does not get wet. The real lotus leaf, don't go and try this with a lily leaf. Once I tried it, the lily leaf got all wet. I said, where did we go wrong? Then somebody said, your botany should improve, your Gita knowledge is okay. This is not lotus. Then they showed me a lotus leaf. Lotus leaf is much thicker and it has a very different kind of surface. And I said, okay, I took some water and whatever little anger was in me, with that I threw it on the lotus leaf. They just form bubbles. They just like nice moti, nice pearls. They run around. The lotus leaf does not get wet. Such are the analogies given by various books of wisdom, that you and I can have an outlook, can have a certain way of seeing things, whereby even if we are doing a lot, meeting expectations and raising the bar, we would not get so much taxed. So rather than just settling for the poetic or literary beauty of these metaphors, we should examine what it means to have that kind of consciousness. So first of all, Let me share with you, somewhere I read, in this world there are people, lots of people who get tired by work. It's understandable. Then there was another line. There are a lot of other people who get tired by the thought of work. I believe there was some office somewhere, maybe government office, I guess. Morning they come and look at all the files, so much, and all that is piled up because of their utter inefficiency in the previous days. But looking at so many files to be cleared, hi, chalo kuch chai pee ke aayenge. They haven't done anything at all. Just the thought of so much work to be done. So this once more shows there is something about our mind, our way of seeing. Here I shall share with you not only the outlooks but also certain practices. We can actually do a small 1-minute practice a little later. In our constitution, the way our personality is made, what I am sharing now has nothing to do with any ism, Hinduism or Buddhism, Christianity or Islam or anything. What I am going to share with is about the place of breath. We think, we breathe, and hardly any of us imagines that thinking and breathing have any connection between them. We would imagine that breathing is necessary for the anatomy, for keeping things in good shape, for supplying oxygen so that blood gets purified. We know a little biology. Whereas thinking is completely, totally different. While breathing has its functions and thinking has its functions, that is agreed, there is a very wonderful open secret about human life. In the life of every one of us, no matter what we are, what professionally we are, what religion-wise we are, gender-wise what we are, age-wise what we are, etc., despite any differences or common ground, if we, even for a few minutes, just notice our breathing. Not easy, it looks very simple. That is called in our traditional language prana vikshan. Prana is breathing. Vikshana is watching. We are just watching the breathing. Alright, I am breathing in now, I am breathing out now. Alright, I am breathing in now, I am breathing out now. In this way, you will find if you do it for 5 minutes, your mind becomes so much calmer. The mind cannot remain agitated, the mind cannot remain in fear or anxiety if we do a short exercise of watching the breath. But as I already admitted, this watching the breath is easier said than done. It's our own breath, by the way. I am not asking you to watch the other person's breath. Other day there was a puja in Noida, when Pandit Ji had gone. And puja karate samay Pandit Ji said to the Yajman, they call, phool feko and water chod do, then something else, isko khincho, usko adhar rakho. Then the Pandit Ji said, Pandit Ji's English was limited and he was required to say, hold nose. The man held the Pandit Ji's nose. Pandit Ji said, not my nose, hold your own nose. Man said, I didn't, you said hold nose, I thought I had to hold your nose. So coming back here, breathing, our own breathing. I have to observe, I have to watch, I have to just notice the in and out movement of my own breath. Looks very simple, but when you try it, you will find the mind wanders. Maybe basically deep inside us, if there is one person whom we don't want to face, it is we ourselves. We want to face everybody else, but we in a sense are running away from ourselves. This happens with breath also. So, if somebody finds this breath observation next to impossible, someone concludes that looked simple but it is so deceptively simple, this is not my cup of tea. That is how there are other exercises. You have to count some number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You breathe in, hold the breath for 2 or 3 counts, then maybe equal. Or some people prefer to do the exhalation a bit longer. So you take some ratio, some reasonable ratio, some easy to follow ratio. So that is a regulated breathing with some rules, whereas earlier one was normal breathing. Breathe as any other time you do. Normal breathe. Here this is regulated breathing. You will find your mind becomes calm. Stress, reduced stress is what we are talking about. I will cover a few points about stress reduction. In Indian tradition, we have always talked about Trikarana Shuddhi. Three means three, Sanskrit or English, three is three. Karana in Sanskrit means instrument, like Upakaran, Karan. Our eyes, ears, nose, all of them are Karan. In fact, even mind is called in a manner of saying Antakaran. Antaha is inner instrument. Nose, tongue, etc. are outer instruments. So what is this three Karana? As you may have heard an expression at times, Kayena Vacha Manasa or Manakarma Bachan. Some of you may be knowing or may have heard somebody in your home singing Hanuman Chalisa. वहाँ ये एक्सप्रेशन आता है मन कर्म वचन ज्ञान समथिंग मन ज्ञान गुण सागर राइट मन क्रम वचन ज्ञान गुण सागर etc. मन is thought, krama is the Audi version of karma, action, and vachana, not Amitabh Bachchan, not Big B. Vachana is again a Gramya version of vachan. So in English too we have this expression thought, word and deed. When we want to win the hand of a girl or a girl wants to win the hand of a boy, I love you by thought, word and deed. We say. Thought, word and he worked so hard. He worked for the country by thought, word and deed. This idiom, thought, word and deed, is a very comprehensive expression. Now, Trikarana Shuddhi is nothing but certain exercises you and I may do, whether we believe in God or not, whether we believe in a soul or not. These are certain secular exercises which we can do to bring about purification of mana, krama, vachan, thought, action and word, or thought, word and deed. Talking of belief in God, don't think that Swamiji, maybe just to win us over, he is saying you don't have to believe in God, but slowly he is going to try to convert us, we are sure. You may think, not really. But talking of belief in God, I once saw a greeting card, very interesting greeting card. It was called Agnostic's greeting card. An agnostic is somebody who neither believes in God nor rejects God. So the greeting card went like this. He has to send to somebody. May God, if there is God, save your soul if you have one. You sign that below and send it. Now, Trikarana Shuddhi. Now, your generation actually is far more aware and much more into the purification of the body, various forms of workout. Some of the things that you people practice, I didn't even know the name of it. Last time I went and attended one seminar on holistic living, and there was somebody who was going to talk on and show some exercises of some system called, what's that today, Pilates. Is it Pilates? I said, what is this? We know Gulatis in India. What is this Pilates? Then that person demonstrated. Today you have access to Tai Chi, you have aerobics and yoga of course, and Western and walking, so many. And there are so many fitness clubs. So friends, without making it very long, if somebody puts in 3 hours in a week, about 3 hours in a week of certain well-chosen physical exercise, your body will be purified. Body in a way goes with that karma. With body you act. In the same way, vachan, speaking. Now, the traditional interpretation would be purify your speech, by repeating God's name, recite this, get up in the morning and chant Vishnu Sahasranam or such things. That is traditional meaning. I have a new interpretation for the, multicultural society of today. You and I can purify our speech by being a bit more cautious about how we talk to people, how we, respond or react to their, whatever they do. Last evening I was in Goa airport and a very senior physician from Goa shipyard, a public sector organization, was saying, he was expressing certain concern. Today lots and lots of people are getting MBBS, but Swamiji, people like you should hold workshops on how they may talk. I said, what happened, Dr. Prabhu? Then Dr. Prabhu said, other day I had gone to a big hospital and said I want to meet the chief medical officer, and a few young doctors were sitting, and they were all definitely qualified, but they looked at me and they knew that I too was a doctor, they knew, and yet they just, please go that way. The body language and the tonal quality, I'm sure in Airbnb your very field requires a degree of, politeness and sophistication. But Dr. Prabhu was telling about a number of MBBS graduates of recent times who, with so much of medical knowledge, were not really trained in good communication, in polite way of talking and so on. And nor do I claim, I am going to be 60 now this year, even at the age of 60, I cannot claim that 10 out of 10 times I speak properly in, not in this kind of speech. This is a kind of a, little formal setting. But in day-to-day scenarios, all of us have a tendency to be a little casual and rough at times, and maybe to somebody else very polite. Somebody else we are very caring, whereas a certain minimum amount of, number one, being polite and pleasant, number two, being true also. For the sake of being pleasant, we cannot sacrifice truth, and for the sake of being true, we should not hastily jump into harsh ways of saying. So, sum and substance is, if you and I increasingly born out of awareness, speak and come out with such body language whereby there is greater harmony, then vachan, our speech is purified. Mana krama vachan. Now comes mind. How are we to purify our mind? One of the tragedies of modern times is professional courses have multiplied. Lots of skill development has come up. There are so many crash courses for people to learn computers, and in computers, in that field itself, there is a plethora of variations. People are coming to know, the opportunities to learn about money, about machines, about systems, about various forms of new software, various forms of new gadgets. They have multiplied. But alas, there is so little of either opportunity or time available to learn about the way our mind works. Our own mind, to understand and then to educate a little bit. Now what am I talking about? Just as we invest a lot of time and energy in learning various subjects that help us have a better job, travel, transact, etc. There is actually a lot of valuable literature in different languages, in prose and poetry, in all kinds of forms. Nowadays, even in the digital media, on the internet and whatnot, about having a loving mind, a caring mind, having a sensitive mind, not a pious and calm mind that is foolish. Sometimes in the name of being pious, one becomes so foolish. One allows everybody to walk over them. So there is a lot of literature, lot of people have written, and not only printed books in various forms. My point is, it pays. It pays for us to invest, I would again say, 3 hours in a week on an average. If you can invest in reading the so-called self-development literature of a certain sattvic kind. By sattvic I mean holistic. Sattvic I mean that kind of self-development where not only we become better, but we contribute better also. Perhaps there are some aggressive forms of literature. I have never been attracted to it much, but surely in this world, under the name self-help, there are ways, dream big and get it. Kar lo duniya mutti mein, or some kind of, fancy titles are given, and many a time such literature is not anchored in some holistic. Holistic, Holistic, is drawn from the word Wholistic. Holistic is about the whole. Now, if you ask me, can you give an example? Years ago, I had the chance to read. Now, it's an old book. For you, it may be an old book, but still it is in market. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That is a book which is about self-help. In fact, the first of the 7 habits is be proactive. Be proactive, and what are the things like think win-win, or seek to understand others rather than seeking to be understood. 6 habits, and the 7th one is continually improve all these 6. That becomes sharpen the saw, he says. It's an amazing book. He quotes from Bible, he quotes from Gita, he quotes from Zen and everywhere. There is no bias, there is no sectarianism there. So, mind can be purified by staying in touch with such literature. Now, lastly, to touch upon stress management, stress reduction, I would say, number 1 I said, breath control. That calms the mind. Let me honestly admit, calming the mind doesn't really change your mind. It is like there is a criminal, somebody with criminal tendencies. The police catch hold of him and maybe give a shot to him, some kind of sedative. The criminal softens down and so gay. The police then say, "Abhi to shant hai." We don't know. When he wakes up and the influence of the shot, injection goes away, he can be as wild as before, if not worse. Likewise, let me admit, the breath observation or breath control which I talked about cannot change you, but temporarily it can give you calmness. It is only study, for which I gave an example, Stephen Covey's book. There is an author, Eknath Ishwaran, an Indian person, but who later, last 25 years of his life, he spent in USA. His works also, Ishwaran spelt as Easwaran, are amazing. They really refine your thought processes. You become more sensitive. Without letting go of your true needs, you also become aware of how others would be happy. So, I would sum up my inputs on reducing stress. If you are into maybe 2 or 3 sessions of 5 minutes breath observation a day, or even just 2, one in the morning, one in the evening, and if you are into 3 hours of exercise and 3 hours of self-development study, and improving speech, you don't have to compartmentalize it. Whenever you are talking to people, reacting to people, just adopt a softer and a more caring way of responding. My favorite example is, suppose you are taking a short break at home or in some place with the door closed, and you want people to not disturb you. You could express it in 2 ways. you can put a sticker outside the door in red letters, maybe with a skull and two bones or something. Danger, do not disturb. Exaggerated. Another way could be you write a sticker and very soft language, welcome, but please see me after 5 p.m. There you are asking them to see you, but after 5, now let's say it's 4 o'clock or 4:15, then whatever you wanted is expressed in a more soft way. Now there are methods like this, exercise, spiritual or self-developmental study, some breathing exercises and so on, that can tremendously reduce your stress. Talking about proactive, my submission, my sharing, maybe here something I can learn from you also. I was very glad to see that even among certain nice inputs given to you, the very first thing is prioritize work that advances the mission and positively impacts the community. These thoughts, which are some guidelines I suppose in your company, go so well with what I have with me to share with you. My submission is in a different language though. If any of us really sees the beauty of proactivity, if any of us, including the speaker, sees the charm, sees the joy of proactivity, we would not go for any other mode of behavior. What is proactive? What is being proactive after all? In a hurry, we might imagine it's just demanding more from me now. Somebody says, "Oh, I want you to be proactive." They are not letting me be myself. They are asking me, go that extra mile, stretch yourself. ऐसा लगता है. But actually it is not so. If we see the beauty of proactivity, proactivity is achieving things with less energy input actually. Because if we are not proactive and wait till some problem becomes big, then you have to spend much more time, much more energy and firefighting, putting out the fire and so on. When you leave, we will be giving you a short article. A certain CEO in Chennai of a small or medium-sized company has written very well. She says, think about it. Do you deal with things only when they become an issue? That is lack of or opposite of proactivity. Do you deal with things when there is an escalation to handle? Implying you knew about it before, but let's say we think देखा जाएगा, we'll see. When it becomes escalated. Whereas a proactive person would be someone who, she writes a nice language, someone who checks the temperature of his business, checking the temperature of his business and business interactions now and then he or she alerts himself or alerts herself to what could go wrong. Therefore, really it is not so much of running faster or working harder. It is actually it could be a matter of going a bit slower, but seeing what could happen at a little distance after a little length of time. It is about having a plan rather than going mechanically. Swami Chidananda, who taught me Gita and such things, used to have a formula for success. He put it this way: plan out your work, work out your plan. That is how he put it. Much later, many years later, I picked up a version of it in USA. Somebody, an NRI, our own Indian, settled there, said to me, "Sir, in this part of the world we express the same in this way." I said, "What is that?" They said, "In a way I like this American version more. Make a plan, go by the plan," he said. Very simple. Yeah. And for years I have been quoting it in my lectures. Just other day I realized I have yet to implement it really. Most of my lectures I don't plan. Nowadays a little better than before. Most of us, sometimes with very fancy degrees and whatnot, basically our life, is rather haphazard. We don't plan. Wherever there is a pressure, wherever there is a demand, we say my life is highly demand driven. Whoever puts pressure and pulls me, I go. We say sometimes. That is not proactivity. Just because somebody calls, somebody says, can you do this for me? Or somebody just comes with certain, excitement. Please do this today itself, some, we call it hava bhava, some gestures. You don't have to yield really. In fact, if you can learn a little drama, you also can, as he or she makes a little drama and says, abhi karo. You also say, मैं तो अभी करना चाहता था. You know what? You also make equal number of, Then he will say, मेरा नाटक इसने भी सीखा है. So every time we don't have to yield. But as you know and I know, this is all easier said than done. So do we have proper plan? And what is more, do we have a plan A as well as a plan B? If not in everything, at least in certain important things, important responsibilities of ours, to have a plan A and a plan B can make us really proactive. That article which you will get has all these points. And one more example, Mrs. Ranjini Manian shares in that article. In communication with a customer, with a client, with anybody, can you answer not just the question asked, but other related ones? This is not to mean be very talkative. If somebody asks, how far is Noida from here? Don't say, Noida is so many kilometers, Connaught Place is so many kilometers, and if you want to go to Faridabad, it's so many kilometers. That fellow says, Namaste, Namaste, hum nahi samajhte. You just go away. Not in an unrequired context, but with a certain sensitivity. There are times when you know that the person asking for this will need also certain more information. So having recognized that kind of genuine possibility, you not only answer the questions asked, but other related ones as well, because these could become issues, though no one had raised them, but you foresee that some more issues may come up, so you better say well in advance. So proactivity is something where, as we study such literature a little bit, as we deeply appreciate the value of it, how true. This would help me achieve more with less strain actually, with less exertion. And the whole thing is going to make everybody happy. It's a win-win situation. Others too will be happy, me too will be happy. So in summary, it is nothing but a more intelligent living. And to connect one last thing with it, to quote from Stephen Covey in that context, Stephen Covey had made in time management a 4-quadrant analysis. Some of you may have studied it. 4 boxes, 4 quadrants, first, second, third, fourth. And he had, one criteria is unimportant and important. Another criterion is not urgent and urgent. The most foolish among us actually are always busy with things which are neither urgent nor important, but some fancy. It's like a friend of mine does Surya Namaskar in the morning. Just to do 12 Surya Namaskars, he takes 1 hour. Then I asked, how come so much time you take? Because after every one Surya Namaskar, he rearranges the books in the room, checks WhatsApp message, then one more. This is such a restless mind, unsteady mind. So that arranging the books is not so urgent that you have to stop halfway your exercise schedule. let's leave them. Many of us are always firefighting. We are attending to urgent things, and about any good thing we say, yeah, I know I should be doing it, but one of these days I am going to do it. Whereas Kavi says quadrant 2 is important but not urgent at all. That requires great wisdom and great courage. This is not urgent, but it is important. And therefore, I am going to take this up. So, that kind of identifying what is important and with certain will and certain wisdom, putting to the side the so-called urgent things. If something is very urgent, of course you have to. That is the category of urgent and important. Urgent and important no one can avoid. But lot of urgent things are not so important. We attend to important but not urgent things in the 4-quadrant analysis. Then we right away get better time managers, we are also far more proactive. Let me pause here, and I welcome all of you to share your thoughts. Need not be a question only. Maybe you have something to add to what I said. After all, you are the professionals, and I am a professional advisor only. I am not a professional really. Sometimes people ask me, what is your profession? I said, Paropadesh. दूसरों को advise कर देना. They do whatever they need to do. We go place to place giving them. Anyway, please don't hesitate. Feel free to.
You seem very worldly wise at the moment. Can you touch upon a time when you weren't as worldly wise as you are currently? I mean, I could have worded it much better.
Well worded. Very interesting. Go on. Yeah.
So can you touch upon that time and can you say what was the inflection point in which you changed?
Right. Though nobody had made this comment before, your comment has such truth in it. What were the inflections? Yeah. First of all, in a general way, life is a great teacher. At the age of 23, I gave up my job here only in Noida. No, 23 I was drawn to Chinmayananda. 1984, 27. I gave up my job in SCL and joined the ashram in Bombay and all that. You are so right. I was so naive. I thought that now जाके आश्रम में ध्यान करेंगे और boom, I will be enlightened. Nothing happened. So far also nothing happened. But lot of idealism was there. I was still dividing everything into black and white. Now I know that life has so much of grey areas too. Idealism, with due respect to it, has its own pitfalls. It is idealism which on one hand gives you tremendous energy, patriotism, working for country or working for some spiritual goal. Sometimes somebody gets excited by the idea of working for one's language, working for some cause and so on, But the pitfall is, suppose somebody is not really made for it, that will lead to a lot of disillusionment, right? Luckily for me, talking of inflections and things, there has not been any major disillusionment in my life. Luckily for me, though I have had my rise and fall, I have had my success and failure in various ways. Thanks to some little wisdom that I have had, I have been able to take those failures, take those departures from the ideal path with, I can't say total grace, with less of hurt or pain. So what changed me, what made me more worldly wise? Definitely not just books. I have always had interest in general reading. So whether it's Stephen Covey or Scott Peck, he wrote a book called Road Less Travelled, Eknath Easwaran, many Western and Indian authors. I am not a voracious reader. At the same time, I have always had an interest in picking up. Nowadays you have Robin, what's his name? Robin Sharma, and even some novelists, Amish Tripathi, right? Amish Tripathi, I haven't read, but I'm very curious. One day I hope to, today also I saw that book somewhere. When I get some free time, I want to read like that. Though books have given minimal help, a little help. Maybe books have helped me advise others better. But what has really given me some worldly wise, stature is various jerks in life. Like all of you would go through your own kind of jerks, I have also gone through my own kind of jerks. Because life always is unpredictable. Certain places where we expect to be received with love and regard, we don't really. Certain places where we want somebody's friendship, somebody's association, somebody's connection, just because we are Swamis, we are not free of desires. We may have a different kind of desire. It may not be directly money or property, but it may be a certain opportunity to speak or write or something, So, all human life has desires. And my desires also at places, they may be relatively better desires, sattvic you may say, doesn't matter, but desire is desire. When they were not fulfilled, and when I was hoping to get some invitation, let us say, to a fancy conference, another Swami got. Both of us had given a wonderful lecture yesterday on jealousy, not to have jealousy. But that lecture was okay. People were so touched by the lecture, they touched our feet and went, kya baat ki. Next day when he gets invitation and I don't, I get jealous. Or I get something is wrong. What something? सारी दुनिया इस तरह है, बेकार है, छोड़ के जाओ कहीं, So it comes. So a lot of small jerks. Thank God I never had any major jerks, but small jerks in this kind of thing, As we move around, sometimes our gurus find fault with us. When in the beginning we come and prostrate before them. Later on, as we come to know them more, it's a both-way problem. They come to know our problems, we come to know their problems. Just like parents, na? Matra devo bhava, pitra devo bhava, sab कहते हैं. But in any home, the children always imagine that parents of that family are so good. That father is so good. My father, my mother, they don't understand us. This generation gap is always there. Same thing happens in our spiritual settings also. Because of our ego, partly. And the gurus, nobody is, perfect. They do have their own idiosyncrasies. Initially, we don't even question. Later on, we become a little jittery. Especially when they are not doing what we want them to do. If the gurus are giving us what we want them to give, then none of their things is a fault. But here and there, I hope I am clear, in our spiritual organizations, we report to some gurus. And suppose there is a fancy assignment, there is a nationwide spiritual conference, which of the students will go? And I already stretch my neck. Of course, I am the best. But my guru, let us say, let that man go. You stay back and look after the ashram. Then I start grinding my teeth. Then next day I look at the guru in a critical eyes. That is when they are in trouble, we are also in trouble. So thank you for that question. I have become a little bit worldly wise also by going through jerks. Jerks are the great teachers. When things go right, we don't learn much.
In day-to-day life, when we feel we don't have time for things like spirituality, what activity or apparatus would you suggest to include in our lives?
Spending even a little time with nature, because today our life has become so much between the four walls. Then we get into a car, etc. Home also. Our offices and our homes are so much more beautiful these days. but we don't spend much time with nature. So even if it's a little far, a few times we must take a walk or sit quietly in the midst of natural surroundings, and it pays immensely to, as one, to do some acts of service, random acts of service, and find out what appeals to you. Everybody doesn't have to go and do some manual labor. Sometimes if you can teach a subject to somebody, a neighborhood boy, a neighborhood girl, once a week, if you can teach. Suppose you don't have affinity to teaching, maybe it could be not academic teaching, it could be showing a grandmother how to send WhatsApp messages. I mean, her peace will be gone from that day. But she wants to know how to check email. And she says, oh, I am not a computer lady. And you so far didn't find time also. One day you say, no matter what, I'm going to sit with her. And you say, Grandma, let me show you how to do Skype, how to do email. I can tell you, it's not only you are making her happy, but it gives you certain inner lightness. Yeah. So, random acts of kindness can also be a wonderful part of spirituality. Ishwaran in his book says, of course nowadays everything is online, putting others first is one of the habits he advises. And the example he gives, it's a little old setting, in a post office or in a bank, sometimes you have to stand in a line. Nowadays, let's say airport, check-in or security, and suddenly you discover somebody is very restless behind you. You could gently ask, what time is your flight? And he says, just 55 minutes left and they are going to close that check-in counter. You have 1.5 hours. Please go ahead. So in day-to-day life, we do get many opportunities to show a little bit of care and kindness. At the airport, at some places, some person is unable to carry his bag. You and I, who are so far a little fit, we can extend, we can give a hand of help. So some of these we can keep discovering. And lastly, in speech or in reciting and so on, if you believe in God, when you get a chance repeating some stotra, hymns and so on. If you don't believe in God, there are some wonderful songs with nice meanings, connected to nature maybe, connected to human values. You could recite, you could sing them. It's like we are traveling, let us say, rather than humming. I myself am fond of old Hindi songs, I was joking before coming here that if necessary I will give an old Mukesh line, Aansu bhari hai jeevan ki raah hai, and so on. One place I said, and younger generation said, ये गाना ही नहीं है. I said, ये गाना है, मुकेश ने गाया है, आंसू भरी है जीवन. फिर लोगों ने कहा मुझसे, वो गाना नहीं है, आप लोगों के ज़माने में जो था वो गाना ही, वो सब रोना ही है. वो रोना था, हमारे ज़माने में अब गाना आ गया है, आपका सिर्फ रोना है. So my point here is, yours is very practical question. We may enjoy some that kind of songs, but at least once in 5 times when you feel like humming something, hum some song, just start some song which has some human value. There are, not all songs of movies also are romantic only. What was that? In our times there was one Jitendra's the song, Ye Kaun Chitrakar hai, right? Can we say that's an example? आप लोग भी जानते होंगे पुराना. ये कौन चित्रकार है, ये कौन चित्रकार, ये कौन चित्रकार है. I'm a Madrasi, I don't know all the words, but it has got beautiful description of how the whole world is like a painting, and who is the painter behind this?
I have a 7.5 years old daughter. So in our efforts to provide her whatever she wants, we always give her whatever she asks, and maybe even give her something which she hasn't even asked for. But of late I'm realizing she's getting too materialistic about things, right? About too many things. And I couldn't figure out what kind of spiritualistic readings I could provide to her. So is there something which you can suggest as a 7.5-year-old daughter? She should have something which is light to read, but at the same time she is able to understand what the meaning is. She can come up to me and ask questions, but too heavy spiritualist reading might not be comfortable for her. So what could you suggest so that she moves towards the same feeling that happiness is not about things you own, it's about other things.
So, but is she open to reading? She likes to read. If
Well, yeah, sometimes.
A little bit, correct.
I mean, I have
Yeah,
been
yeah, I
reading
can-
that those Jatak Kathas and Panchtantra,
Correct.
which are more towards lessons of morals.
yes,
But
yes.
nothing spiritual in that, right?
Oh, yes. The spirituality is a bit controversial in the sense there are so many spiritual streams. Someone, you may like Ramakrishna Mission, somebody else may like your Paramamsa Yogananda in a Hindu context, I am saying. Your daughter may not, her chemistry may be different, but still an
Which direction should I push? Because I am what I am today because of
Exactly.
the way I have been
Exactly.
brought up. The same thing I want to ensure that
Exactly.
my parents were not as enlightened or as educated as I am today.
Yeah.
So I want to ensure that my daughter becomes
I
better.
can recommend one series of books published by Macmillan that is called Garden of Life series. Garden of Life series, and it's a set of 10 books, one for first standard, another for second standard, third for Garden of Life series, book 1, book 2, book 3, it goes all the way up to 10th standard. And that has been around for a long time. One Radhika Krishna Kumar is the author, and it sold like hotcakes, in those days. Otherwise, have you visited Ramakrishna Mission in Panchkuma Marg? Oh, in 20 minutes walk from Connaught Circus, you have Ramakrishna Mission, an age-old place. In fact, Ramakrishna Ashram is a metro stop. Ramakrishna Mission or Ashram is a stop of Delhi Metro. वहाँ से 2 minutes है. You go in, they have a beautiful bookstore, and there are lots of children's story books, moral books, and all those things. They have done a lot of work in that field, Ramakrishna Mission. And they are a little bit, Sri Ramakrishna said God is one, we call by different names. So you won't be conditioning your daughter in some very narrow way. Yeah, I would recommend Ramakrishna Mission because they are very, very broad based.
Yeah, so we were talking about proactivity, right? So you always don't have to be proactive in everything. You also have to cut down on proactivity. You have to be balanced. So what is that balancing part? So we talk about being proactive. But where do we balance it out? Where do we stop being proactive is my next question.
So when you say we don't or we can't be proactive all the time, what is the other option?
Just to add, I also had like a similar thought, what he's saying probably, and maybe it's connected, maybe it's not, is that, when we are proactive, and essentially to me, proactivism happens when you are like deeply thinking about something continuously, right? As you said, proactivism also takes a lot of effort and time, it's not something that appears to us out of our mental, enlightenment upon something, like especially about work, right? If I want to be more proactive at work, probably I'll be dedicating more of my time share to that and then think about ways on how to become proactive. But essentially when balance comes in, balance should come in or should not, the question is, for our mind to be free in to think more creatively and to be open to other thoughts and being proactive, we should ideally give that kind of peace to our brain and or we should not, and then how should we balance it out?
Both of you together make it clear to me. Yes. Um, Let me share with you before I come to your particular question how Stephen Covey puts proactivity. He says at any given point of time, any of us would be concerned about 100 things. Given the chance, we would try to solve all those 100 issues. Then we realize that of those 100 things, we actually are able to exert our influence. We can do something, maybe only about 20 things. Other 80 are not in our control. So if the 100 things with which you are concerned are called the circle of concern, the 20 things where you do have a role to play, where to an extent, more or less extent, you can do something, they are called the inner circle, a subset, a circle within the circle. That is called the circle of influence. And Stephen Covey's definition of proactivity is not to waste or lose energy in the other 80, rather act on the circle of influence. Don't waste your energy going to long discussion, thinking a lot, discussing a lot, and so on. Though, strictly speaking, sometimes the distinction is not clear. We get a feeling, no, I think I can do, and so on. So that's where a little bit of judgment is called for. You need some judgment, because if everybody were to say that I cannot do anything there and hurriedly limit oneself, lot of good work would not take place in. It is only because of some daredevilry and risk taking and some people saying, who says I cannot do, I can, some kind of optimism that things are achieved. But then that is up to you. You got to be honest to yourself. Now coming to balancing, I would look at it this way, that many a time it is okay to say stay with the circle of influence. Don't spend energy in the other 80, 100 minus 20. It's okay to say, but all of us have various tendencies. Even sometimes amidst very serious work, if suddenly somebody says UP elections, do you know what is going to happen now? Some update. We may not be actively involved there, but we are very curious. Or somebody says, do you believe Jayalalitha was murdered? We are far away from Tamil Nadu, and we may not be from Tamil Nadu, let us say. Still, it's a very, like a detective novel story. What? The Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, was she given poison? Very important work also you would put aside and say, so any update on that? Have they found out? Have they proved? So here I would say, be kind to yourself, give yourself a certain amount of leverage. That's how you may balance. You don't have to be, in order to be proactive, if you push yourself too much, I'm not going to think about matters where I have no role to play, then a certain dryness may come up. A certain, for those who are very evolved, highly intelligent, technically it won't strain them at all to stay in their dharma or stay in their circle of influence. But for most of us, 999 out of 1000, to always go according to a framework can be very strenuous. So be kind to yourself. Indulge. In other words, they say indulge. They say to diabetics like me, sir, you are diabetic, but once a week take a sweet. Strictly speaking, a diabetic should not take a sweet at all. But generally, once a week or somewhere a piece one takes. Then one says, I will walk more tomorrow. Then one says, at the end of the month, I will make up for all the walking lost. So, rigorously, there is nothing like balancing, because proactive is the way of the wise. It is like asking, to live a wise life is interesting, but it's very difficult. Can I balance wisdom with some foolishness? Technically, it's not tenable, but practically it is. All of us at times should be foolish. All of us at times should be just to relax, go by our old habitual ways, and somebody says, you are paid enough for it. Give me a break, yeah. Half an hour, I am going to do the old foolish thing. I'm coming back to the right track. I think there is human. It's rather human, because there are tendencies in us. We cannot ignore our tendencies too much. The tendencies have to be given. There is an expression in English, pay the devil its due. So somebody who is very unwell, has chest pain and still feels like having one cigarette. He used to be a chain smoker before. He knows, if I take it, I start coughing. But just 2 puffs he takes. In a way wrong. But the urge is so much. Chalo. That way, you and I can sometimes relax. Somebody comes and gives some big advice. Come tomorrow, you say.
So you touched upon a very interesting point of circle of influence and circle of concern, right?
Concern is larger.
Right. And as you minimize the gap, the happiness increases, right? That's what they say. But there are 2 ways to go about it to increase or decrease the distance. Either you reduce your circle of concern, the circumference of that, or the radius of that, or you increase the circle of your influence, right? And that's how you achieve that. But if you try to cocoon yourself too much into reducing your circle of concern, because I cannot control a lot of things and I can just control so many things only, so I'll continue to remain where I can influence the things and not worry about what's happening outside the world. But doesn't it mean it will restrict my own self within whatever I have, like the frog in the well, right? I'll not be able to explore anything outside of the world, trying to influence or if something doesn't concern me, it doesn't push me towards achieving better things. So how do we balance it out?
One approach could be, with regard to that larger circle of concern, do not cut down when it comes to gathering information. Cut down only when it comes to spending. That is, continue.
If I get to know something, I'll process, right?
Not necessarily. If you are cautious, you can do a window shopping on a mall and whole 3 hours come back without spending a penny.
Well, I do that. My wife doesn't, but I do. But still, I can process that information, right?
True. See, if you do window shopping, the urge is to, I didn't want to buy anything, but that one piece there and the 3rd floor, that was so tempting. That was irresistible. I would beg, buy, or what is that? Beg, borrow, or steal that object. By hook or crook, I want it, etc. Yes, you are right. Hota hai. But coming back to this topic, circle of concern, it is good for us to be well informed, like window shopping. But be, I won't say 100% control yourself, but exercise a degree of restraint in spending time and energy on it. Because circle of concern minus circle of influence by definition is an area where you can't do much. If you try to do, it is waste of energy.
Lots of time you are living life based on what others want of you.
Yes.
Right? And if you don't know your goal yourself, you're pretty much living up to other people's standard.
Yeah.
So how do you not do that, and how do you find what your purpose to life is?
Right. Yeah, a lot of us are in that kind of situation, and the saying goes, if you don't know where you want to go, others will send you in the direction where they want you to go. If you don't know your goal, others will get their goals fulfilled through you. This way we are warned and again warned. And yet, if, as you rightly put, if we are not clear about what we want, no amount of reading such literature helps. After all that, again we just go by. So that applies to what otherwise in simpler terms is said, learn to say no and so on. When we don't have a clear goal, I don't have a clear idea of what I will do on Friday evening, let us say, not this Friday, some Friday evening. Then somebody says, we have a function, my child's birthday, you must come. we are likely to say, okay, what time is it? I may be a little late. Well, no problem, even if 9 p.m. you come, they say. Okay, and we go. So, saying no is not easy, and finding our own goal is not easy. So, it happens in two ways. One is life teaches us lessons. So, hopefully, it is not too late. A lot of people get pretty old before they realize what actually they want. Another is, that's where this what I said in the context of stress reduction, it has a lot of other benefits. Regular workout and some self-developmental study, this actually prepares you to say no. In traditional language, permit me to use a technical expression, they have a concept in Indian traditional spirituality. Apart from the blood vessels and the nerves, in Yoga Shastra they talk about another system inside us. They are called Nadi system. Nadi is neither a tunnel or a tube carrying blood, nor a tube carrying nerve signals from the brain. It is a third system carrying Sukshma pranic energy. That's what the language they use. If you do exercise, this yoga or walking or whatever, if you do certain spiritual studies, then those channels called nadis get purified. They talk about nadi shuddhi. When there is nadi shuddhi, your own heart's voice you will be able to hear more loudly than ever before. In other words, it is not true that we do not have our own goal, but it is a faint whisper at present. For our inner voice, which is whispering all this time, hey, don't you see what you want is this? Don't you see what you want is that? There is a voice, but that voice has got muffled. That voice is as though made so faint because of nadi ashuddhi. When nadi becomes shuddha, you purify your nadis. How? Exercise, breathing exercise, physical exercise, etc. And in a way, this may look a little mumbo jumbo language. It goes so well with modern science. If you read Deepak Chopra and such people who are highly qualified. Deepak Chopra, as you know, was a formal endocrinologist or internist, I think. Maybe they are the same, I don't know. MD, Deepak Chopra, MD. He talks about various glands and various secretions. You hear sometimes of what is that, adrenaline, and there are so many secretions. So when somebody proposes to me, come on, let's go do that. This weekend you are coming, you are joining. Okay, I am not giving you a chance, etc. When we are very meek, we say, hey, wait, but he has gone. Then we say, he didn't give me any option, so I am joining. When your nadi shuddhi takes place, or in Deepak Chopra's language, thanks to certain physical exercises, breathing exercise, whatever, when the glands secrete the right juices properly, even if he doesn't give you a chance, you go behind him and say, please count me out. So there is a nadi shuddhi involved here. There is a certain internal dynamics of energies. Therefore, your generation who spend a lot of time with computers, with machines, with all these things, on one hand, is enviable, but on the other, you all have a risk of going more and more going farther and farther from this nadi shuddhi. So you got to develop your ways of cleansing the inner system. These days they talk of toxins, right? Take green tea, take herbal tea. This is something similar. Do something whereby your ability to say no to a fruitless proposal increases. I personally connect it with some physical and breathing exercises. Whenever I have done yoga morning 45 minutes, I don't do every day, I miss. I have found that day I am more alert. People cannot take me for a ride so easily, or they take me for a ride anyhow, but just for a mile or so. Otherwise, 10 miles, they leave me there. Then tired, I have to walk back alone. So, for you it may be Daichi, somebody it may be Pilates, for somebody else it may be research, chanting, this, that. You got to find out something where you clearly yourself see, hey, the day I do this, I am more balanced. I don't hurriedly, hastily, mechanically say yes, nor do I say mechanically no. Sometimes a wrong no also fills you with regrets later. Oh, he never asked me for anything, and because I read a book on your power to say no, I told him no. Sometimes we all do that. We regret. I could have declined anybody's request, but not this person. बुरे लोगों को हाँ हाँ कहते रहा और आज अच्छे आदमी को ना बोल दिया. Like that we feel sometimes. So the ability to say yes as well as ability to say no, both are important in the right way. That little article you will get, last point is actually decisively saying yes or no.
Basically, my question is about the thought process of human mind. So, if I am listening to you, I'm taking your thoughts, right? So, at this point of time, my mind is running in many directions. So, let's take an example. I go home, I try and research about something that I want to do in my future. Okay, and tomorrow I come and describe it or tell my thoughts to someone else. He adds a few points to it. I go back home again, I research on the points he has said, right? So basically, if it takes a day or two in my case, and if I believe that okay, I am taking my thoughts into consideration, and that will be the only thing that I will do, but I don't do that, right? I am taking everyone's points into consideration, and that actually increases the time that is taken by me to do that activity. Right, and so you also spoke about whatever we think there should be a restraint, like saying yes or no, saying yes decisively, saying answering a question, or at least like even talking to someone that you should have an appropriate tone, right? So the part of a restraint is always there, right? So how do you practice that, or how do you get that into your mind that if I have thought something, I will do that only? Not exactly take others' opinion. Like I would take it, but not exercise it into the activity that I'm about to do.
To say I am not going to listen to anybody next 3 days, I am going to do what I have decided to do, would be one extreme. Because sometimes there may be an input which is really very good. And to say, to have no will at all. Anybody moves us in a different direction, that's other extreme. So the middle path actually is wise. So our policy or our general outlook should be, unless something is very convincing, I am not going to change this, budge from this schedule. You make a schedule for yourself, unless something is very pressing, very convincing. Sometimes it could be a domestic scenario. I have decided tonight I am going to revise one chapter of Stephen Covey. I brought that book, etc. And I say to myself, even if Donald Trump makes a telephone call to me, I am not going. Just a man. That time, let's say your own spouse or mother, brother, somebody, emergency, excruciating pain. You can't say, You say, you put Stephen Covey down and attend to her health. So that is one physical example. Similarly, see, I went to IIT Madras to do MTech in 1980. Within 2 months, Swami Chidananda came to Chennai. And out of some curiosity, I heard his lecture. That caught on like a fire. I started dreaming becoming a Vedantin. Then I took a job in Delhi. Here also I heard some more. So it was irresistible. When I look back, I have no regrets about it. But at the same time, as I answered his first question, that kind of imagination I had that now this will solve all my problems, that never happened. In somebody else's case, it could backfire also, or it could go wrong also, because we never know what we are deep inside. In my case, broadly it worked out well. I later on found that, yeah, this is where I belong. Somebody else after some years may get a strong feeling that no, I took a wrong decision. It wouldn't be totally wrong, something one learns, but one may not be suited to spending all one's life in that direction. So there are many who join ashrams, to extend my example, who afterwards come back to the so-called regular life, marry, raise a family and so on. Sometimes they have done the wise thing. Because let me tell you one truth quickly, this Swami's life, it's not about spirituality only. Those of us who can speak or do something, then things are more conducive. I have met some Swamis who, let us say, neither speak nor do administration. Then, though their love of God may be more than love of God or love of truth, may be more than some of us. But this dunya is like that, Dunya asks for what they call mileage. If you say, I love God, I want to be in your ashram, very nice to know you love God, but what can you do for the ashram? At least can you cook in the kitchen, roti, You say, oh yeah, I know cooking, then get in. If you say, I love God, I am intoxicated with love of God, this dunya is a cruel dunya.
So thank you for being a patient audience, and our holy celebrations follow. Thank you so much. One small, we have a small token of our appreciation for Dhimahi team and Swamiji. So Jasmeet, would you get on?
Thank every one of you. I enjoyed interacting